We are still awaiting This meeting of the Babergh Planning Committee. I will now ask the Governance Officer to read out the domestic arrangements and the fire rings. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. If you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off and your laptop is also switched to silent. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intending to do so, please can you let me know? The fire safety arrangements: if you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit which is in that corner and make your way to the assembly point, which is Ipswich Town Football Club training ground, and do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Planning Manager Mark Russell. Morning. Legal Advisor Ian Dupre. Case Officer Sam Summers. And we'll be joined by Alex later on. And board members this morning, I'm getting ahead of myself, Alistair McCraw. Can I move to the agenda, please? Okay. Apologies for absence and substitutes.
Thank you, Chair. We have Councillor Clover substituting for Councillor Beer, and we are still awaiting the arrival of Councillor Davies. Thank you.
Thank you. To receive declarations of a disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable and non-registrable interests by members. Are there any to declare? No? Thank you.
Chair, as Councillor Davies has just arrived, we need her to confirm that she's got no interests. Thank you.
Quick question. We're on item 2. If you didn't hear all of it, it's to receive declarations of any interest or anything on the agenda? No. Thank you. Declarations of lobbying. Anyone been lobbied? No. Declarations of personal site visits. Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. I undertook a personal site visit and was escorted around the public areas of the site by Councillor McCraw on the 13th of August.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may.
Yes?
Just a second. I'm using this one, aren't I? Thank you. This is the right microphone. Yeah. Councillor Wymark did speak to me about the meeting, and he's assured me that he was not lobbied by the ward member. The ward member kindly showed him round and pointed things out, which is quite acceptable. And that's not lobbying. That's not anything untoward.
Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of July. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No. In that case, could I have a proposer to accept the minutes? Councillor Register. A seconder, please. Councillor Wyman. The Governance Officer will now conduct the electronic vote. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Grandon, would you like me to take your vote verbally? Or have you had time to log in? Councillor Davies? Thank you. Thank you. Chair, that's 9 votes for and 2 abstentions. That's carried.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting have been confirmed and will be signed in a moment. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Site inspections.
No requests.
No requests? Thank you. Schedule of planning applications. DC 2403035. Land south of Brooklands Road, Brantham. I will now invite the case officer, Samantha Summers, to introduce the application to the committee. Sam, all yours.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a Section 73 to vary a condition of a previously approved reserved matters application at Brooklands Road in Brantham. The application comes to committee because it concerns a major residential development. Councillor McCraw also called this application in and it was discussed at delegation panel. It was agreed that the application should be decided by the Planning Committee for openness. In 2015, an application was received for the regeneration site on the previous industrial land to the southern edge of Brantham. The regeneration site included some agricultural land between the existing housing in Brantham and the industrial area. Planning permission was granted for a hybrid application for regeneration of existing industrial estate and development of adjoining land. The hybrid application had two parts: outline and full details. The outline part included mixed-use development to comprise approximately 320 dwellings, approximately 44,123 square metres of Class B1, B2 and B8 employment uses, approximately 720 square metres of Class A1, A3, A4 and A5 retail uses, and Class D, community uses, provision of public open space, and new playing pitches. The full details comprised proposed new access from Brooklands Road, improvements to Factory Lane, new on-site road network and structural landscaping, foul and storm water drainage infrastructure. Today's application concerns the yellow plot of land for the residential use, which you can see at the top of that plan. The outline application granted for permission for approximately 320 dwellings on previous agricultural land to the north of the site. In 2019, a reserved matters application was received for 288 dwellings on the site and was granted. Members should note that a viability assessment was carried out for the residential phase and no affordable housing contribution was secured for the site. All 288 dwellings on the site are for open market. However, a clause in the Section 106 agreement meant that viability was to be undertaken at a later stage to see whether financial circumstances had changed. When this updated viability was carried out, £1 million was secured as a commuted sum for affordable housing to be spent in the Babergh district. This aerial photo shows the residential part of the wider regeneration site and the subject of this application. As you can see, construction has commenced in the northern part of the site and dwellings are now occupied. This plan shows the constraints of the site. The site is outside of the settlement boundary, which is shown by the brown line. And that runs just along here. However, the site has an extant planning permission and can be built out as previously approved under the reserved matters permission. The principle of development on this site is acceptable. There is a footpath shown by the green line, just here, which runs through the industrial area to the south of the site. The green coloured areas that you can see to the left and right of this drawing shows the extent of the Suffolk and Essex Coast and Heaths National Landscape Area. The hatched blue area at the bottom here shows the extent of floodplains. The flood zones just touch the southern boundary of the site. Flood mitigation has already been secured by the previous permissions, and the flood teams have raised no objection to this new scheme. This Section 73 application seeks to vary Condition 1 of the Reserved Matters Permission that concerns the approved drawings. The application seeks to change the mix and layout of some of the dwellings in 4 small parcels of the site. That's actually shown by those 4 stars. This would allow the number of larger dwellings to increase on the site and smaller dwellings to reduce, which would result in an overall decrease in the number of dwellings on the site from 288 to 281. This shows in a bit more detail those 4 small areas shown by those 4 red stars on the previous plan. It's a very, very small part of the site. This table shows the total mix of housing that has been approved on the site in comparison with the proposed new mix. It would result in the loss of 2 2-bedroom houses, 13 3-bedroom houses, and there would be an increase of 7 4-bedroom dwellings and 1 5-bedroom dwelling. This table was produced by Strategic Housing and may look a little bit confusing, so I'll try and explain it the best that I can. The top table shows the mix of housing at Reserved Matters stage. The bottom table shows the proposed new mix. This also shows how it relates to the district-wide need, as you can see. The slight decrease in the number of dwellings with 3 bedrooms brings the overall subscription of the house type I'm sorry, let's start that again. The number of dwellings with 3 bedrooms is actually oversubscribed with the previous scheme when considered against the district-wide need. The previous mix provided 119.54% compared with the new mix for 3-bedroom houses, which would bring it down to 104%. District-wide, there is an undersubscription by 11.29% for 4+ bedrooms, and with the new mix of 4 and 5 beds, it provides just over that target at 1.61. This means that the deviation of the required mix within policy has been reduced overall with this proposal and considered a slight improvement to the previous scheme. Therefore, the revised scheme is considered to be more compliant with policy SPO1 than the existing scheme was. And this is to do with district-wide need, not just for Brantham. Brantham doesn't have a neighbourhood plan, so that very specific need hasn't been identified. Policy LP24 requires that all new development meets nationally described space standards. On the previous scheme, only 24% were NDSS compliant, compared with the new dwellings proposed, which are 90%, with only 1 dwelling not being compliant with NDSS. This is considered to be a vast improvement on the previous scheme. The developer has also confirmed that 50% of the units that have been substituted on the site will be Part M42 of the building regulations compliant as required by policy SP24. As you can see, the development has been implemented and the northern part of the site is now being occupied. The next few slides show the houses that have been completed. The proposed dwellings will be the same design, materials and scale as those used elsewhere on the site. The regeneration site is considered to be EIA land under Environmental Impact Assessment regulations. An environmental statement accompanied the hybrid application in 2015. A conformity statement accompanied the Reserve Matters application in 2019 to address the specific area for residential development. Landscape impact was the only issue that was raised because of the close proximity to the national landscape area. The design, scale and materials of the dwellings was considered at that point and were found to be acceptable. A further conformity statement was submitted with this Section 73 application. The statement confirmed that there would be fewer dwellings on the site, but the changes to the layout would not involve vehicular or pedestrian access arrangements, retention of existing vegetation, location and details of the public open space, proposed structural landscape around the site boundaries, or the height of the buildings, which would remain at 2 stories. Just to remind members of the location of the 4 small parcels of land that are the subject of this application, the parcels are not considered to further impact the setting of the national landscape, but because they're inside the site with other buildings that have already been granted permission around the outside of the site. The scope of decision-making for this application is limited to the layout changes to accommodate a change in the number of dwellings on the site and the mix of dwellings by losing 15 smaller units and providing 8 larger dwellings. A reduction in the number of dwellings on the site from 288 to 281 is considered to be acceptable, as it is such a small loss of the number of houses in total. The outline permission specified approximately 320. At Reserve Matters, and after the layout of the site was followed up in detail, 288 dwellings was considered to be an approximate 320. A further reduction of 7 units also falls within this approximation. Highways have not objected to the changes, but have noted that 2 of the plots have triple tandem parking. The correct number of parking spaces have been provided off-road for each dwelling, but they do not support a garage with 2 parking spaces in front. However, this is considered to be a minor issue as on such a large development with only 2 plots having that type of triple tandem parking. It's not considered to cause an impact to highway safety, and it really is more of an inconvenience for the occupiers of the house having to move cars around to get in and out. This application is recommended for approval, carrying all conditions, all relevant conditions over from both the 2015 application and 2019. Thank you.
Put the lights up, actually, now. Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. Sam, under 5.3 on page 21, in relation to the sort of new standards of housing development, why does the applicant think that it's unreasonable to go to these standards?
It is just one dwelling that doesn't meet the NDSS standards. I think we have to bear in mind that the site could be built out as has been previously approved, where only, I can't remember, was it 24% of the houses were actually NDSS compliant. So for those few houses that are being substituted, that is considered to be a vast improvement on the previous ones.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brandon.
Thank you. I don't know if you consider this a bit of a side issue, but the commutable sum, do you foresee that being paid in full? Because obviously this is a viability issue. So do you think the next step might be questioning the commutable sum? Because then I'd be concerned.
So, yes, viability was carried out. No affordable housing on that site at all. Further viability was carried out, and a £1 million commuted sum has been secured. Not to be spent specifically in Brantham, that is for district-wide need.
But, and that's still in place and still expected to be paid?
I'm not sure. I think it might have already been paid.
Fine. Thank you very much, if that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Wyman.
Thank you. Sam, could we go on to 1.5 on page 23? The change in mix of dwellings, including the reduction in number of two and three bedroom dwellings. Why does the, what evidence do we have from the applicant to justify their point that their smaller homes aren't selling?
I think because this is strictly market-based housing on this particular site, Taylor Wimpey will know which type of houses are selling and which ones have been requested and interest shown in them. They have told me that 2 and 3 bedrooms are not selling, as well as the larger dwellings in this particular site. I suspect that some of that is to do with the fact that it's so close to Manning Street Station and is very commutable for families. But I'm sure that they will be able to explain that themselves when they have the opportunity to be asked questions.
It would be nice to see some firm evidence to substantiate that, because the whole project seems to spin on the change in housing mix, and to put forward that as a point of reference, it would be better if it was substantiated.
Perhaps it's a question for you to ask the applicant a little bit later. They are coming to talk to us. Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, also on page 19, it does appear that Babergh's planning policy comments received, strategic housing comments received. Our team are saying the revised proposal is more consistent with the district-wide needs, so I would assume that our strategic planning team are agreeing with the applicant's revision in that those smaller dwellings aren't selling and that the larger ones are. So I would say it's consistent with our own BDC strategic planning team.
Yes, that's correct. They did not raise any objection to the change in mix. They actually felt it was better district-wide, possibly because there is also quite a large development on Slough Road in Brantham, which is for 65 dwellings, and that has much more of a mix and affordable housing on there. And interestingly, no 5-bedroom units. So if you want a 5-bedroomed house, the Taylor Wimpey site would be the one that you would be going to look for that type of housing.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. On page 21, section 5.2, policy LP24 requires that at least 50% of the dwellings meet the standards set out in part M4 of the building regulations. The last sentence says it's not clear if this requirement has been adhered to. How do we establish whether or not that has been adhered to?
We can actually secure that by condition for the new houses, not for the whole of the whole 281 dwellings that would be left, but those 10 that are being substituted, we could control that 50% of those would be compliant with M42 standards, but it would be by condition that members would need to agree would form part of a planning permission today.
Okay, so that can go in as a condition?
It can, yes.
Okay, because I couldn't spot it in the current list. I'm a bit puzzled as to why it doesn't apply to the previous houses, however. On section 5.3, can we have a condition in there? I think it's actually basically the same thing.
Sorry, just getting to the...
It's two adjacent paragraphs. I think M4 also talks about internal layout so that it's fit for life. Is it exactly the same thing as the previous one, or is it something slightly different?
It is slightly different because with the building regulations, you're talking about things like the width of doorways and that kind of level of detail. With the nationally described space standards, you're talking about all of the internal space of the house. Only one of them doesn't comply. It was felt that out of 10, because the rest of the development was not really NDSS compliant, this was an improvement. And because the rest of the site could, well, indeed, we could just have 288 dwellings as previously approved without that level of NDSS compliance. So just one house not complying out of the 10 new substituted houses seems a little bit unreasonable.
Okay, and on the remaining houses, do they comply with the internal layout size?
Not all of them, no, a very small percentage, because it was granted before our new policy, before the joint local plan was back in 2019.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions? No. Thank you, Sam. I think if you please stay there, because we may need you later on. Thank you very much. Fine. We have questions from members. Public speakers?
Yeah.
We have, I understand, Mr. Mel Bridgman from Parish Council. That's you. You have 3 minutes
Thank you.
to address the committee.
Thank you very much. Approving this variation does not make sense to the villagers of Brantham. Morally, it doesn't make sense. In 2015, exceptional outline planning permission was granted for no affordable housing on the Greenfield Proviso D site on the condition that the nearby factory site would be decontaminated and regenerated. That decontamination and regeneration has not taken place, so the original premise no longer stands, and yet the village will miss out on lower cost and properly affordable housing. The village of Brantham will not see direct benefit from the £1 million commutable sum. Further, in Brantham Parish Council's 2023 village consultation, top in the issues raised by the village was the desire and need for more low-cost and affordable housing, so their children and relatives who have had to leave the village may move back closer to their families. The planning officer's report shows a more than 60% mismatch to the expected mix in these smaller dwellings. Strategically, this does not make sense. At a time when the government has increased targets for new homes in the district, it does not make sense for this council to allow a reduction in the number of dwellings. Economically, it does not make sense. The reduction in the number of dwellings will reduce the council tax income at a time when the district council is struggling to make its own finances balanced. Further, it will reduce the precept received by the parish council, meaning the cost of services will be disproportionately borne by the rest of the village. Socially, this does not make sense. The village needs lower price housing, not 4 and 5 bedroom houses, as was clearly reported by the planning inspector when he overruled this committee's planning permission refusal for the 65 dwellings in Slough Road. He makes an important point that not only is it the number, the size, the type and cost of dwellings, but the impact that that has on the demographics of the village and its consequential social imbalance. To paraphrase, housing in Brantham has increased in cost by 57% compared to 48% elsewhere in the district, and he further stresses the need to address past under-provision and thereby rebalancing the ageing population and provide more affordable housing, which is in particularly short supply. In light of this, I hope the committee will agree with the villagers of Brantham that approving this application does not make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Councillor Grandin?
I just wondered whether Samantha would mind commenting on some of those things that we just heard, whether you were, well, obviously you've recommended for accepting the application, but could you, I wonder if you could kindly comment on what we've just heard, whether that you feel that that's accurate or not, please.
Councillor Grandin, can we just leave that for the moment? Are you happy to come back to that when we...
Yeah.
Let's hear from other questions of public speaking,
Yes.
because there might be a little bit more that needs to go into. There might not,
Yes.
but let's be in that
Okay,
position.
yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Register.
Yeah, thank you for your input in the committee today. You referenced the other development 65 went to planning inspectorate. Can you tell us when that was, the timing of that, and what the detailed planning inspector's comments about the mix of properties was?
If I may, that's got nothing to do with this application.
I will allow it because the man from the parish council, Mr. Bridgman, brought it up, and I will allow him to
I don't agree we should be discussing it.
I agree with Councillor Maybury. We're here to listen to this particular thing. We can't drag everything historically into this application. I just think you're wrong, Chair.
What's the precise question, please? Shall we establish that? Then I'll advise the chairman.
So the precise question, I want to establish whether the planning inspectorate comments were made, and when they were made in the last 48 months, 24 months, or whenever, because it's relevant. Because if the marketing of 2, 3, and 4 and 5 bedroom properties has changed, then if it was made 2-3 years ago, then it might not be relevant.
I mean, we may need to be careful with what weight we attach to the answer, but I think if you can allow the question to be answered, which is when what.
Thank you. Mr. Bridgman, can you remember?
In about the last 2 years, I would think.
The permission was given. The planning inspector's thing might have been a little earlier.
But okay, so the planning inspector's comments would have predated, but the permission was granted here about 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Davis?
Yeah, does Brantham have a neighbourhood plan?
So Brantham doesn't have a neighbourhood plan, but it is looking at them now.
Do you have any numbers around housing requirement within Brantham?
Not yet.
Any more? Thank you very much. We may have to come back to you for some information later on, if you would be so kind as to stay with it. Thank you. We have no objector, we have no supporter present, so we'll move straight on to the applicant. Is that Alison Cornish who's going to speak for the applicant? You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Alison Cornish and I'm the Senior Town Planner for Taylor Wimpey East Anglia, and I also have Andrew Wright, Acting Head of Technical and Planning for Taylor Wimpey East Anglia with me. Thank you to the case officer for their report, and we welcome the recommendation for approval. I thought it would be helpful to members to provide with a little more background to this application, particularly as the proposed new mix has been raised by Brantham Parish Council as a concern. Taylor Wimpey is experiencing challenges across the entire region in the first-time buyer market, which has already resulted in a drop in the number of homes we can deliver. The loss of Help to Buy, in conjunction with challenging economic conditions, has seen the number of traditional first-time buyers, particularly in the new home sector, significantly reduced from the housing market. Conversely, the sale of 4- and 5-bedroom family homes remains more sustainable. Buyers already on the property ladder are seemingly more financially capable to commit to higher mortgage rates through sales of second-hand properties, using the equity in the house to enable them to upsize to a larger new 4- or 5-bedroom home. Taylor Wimpey is also able to offer our Easy Mover scheme, which assists the buyer in selling their existing home. The movement of people into the larger family homes from the smaller 2- and 3-bedroom houses does therefore release smaller properties back onto the property market to be purchased by first-time buyers. The sales figure for the Starview development clearly substantiates the above-market situation. Since January 2024, we have only had 2- and 3-bedroom houses for sale on this development, and we have only sold 12 homes. We would have expected to have sold in excess of 30 homes on this development within this period. We have also had 2 or 3 families a month visiting the sales office, inquiring about the availability of 4-bed houses to purchase. Whilst we acknowledge that the proposed change to the housing mix will result in 7 fewer houses on this site, the changes proposed will accelerate the delivery of homes for the community on this development. There are also specific benefits associated with the amendments proposed. The resultant overall mix of the development will more closely accord with the SHMA. 77% of the development will still be 2- and 3-bed houses. 50% of the plots that have been substituted within the street plan will be M42 compliant in accordance with policy LP24 of the local plan, and 90% of the plots included in the replan will be NDSS compliant. In conclusion, the proposed mix will deliver a more balanced portfolio of housing across the overall development, which will better meet the current market demand for larger houses and improve the delivery, whilst still ensuring a continual supply of first homes for first-time buyers. There are also added benefits with the substitution of the house types as proposed in terms of M42 and NDSS compliance. We therefore respectfully request that members resolve to approve the scheme before you today, and Andrew and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. Chairman, this is not a question. I'm hoping that Ian will say it's fine for me to stay, but as I have been on a working party, which Taylor Wimpey have been part of for the last 3 years, but on another site. Does that preclude me? Okay.
Any more questions for the applicant? Councillor Wyman, you had one, I suspect.
The question I was going to sort of try and get to really was the applicant mentioned the downturn in 2-bedroom home sales, which is across the market. What would they expect to see though in the next 12 to 14 months? Have they got an expectation that the 2 to 3 bedroom market will improve, and or that conflicts quite significantly with what our colleague from the parish council said? Have they got a plan?
Do you think you can answer that, or will you have a shot?
Yeah, of course. I think if you look at the scale of the replan that we're looking to undertake on this development, it really reflects an open-minded approach to what may happen in the future. Where we're finding things at the moment in 2024 is we've had a big drop-off in the number of units we've been able to sell on this development. We've had customers come in talking in our sales area about the potential of buying properties, but invariably those customers are looking for 4 beds, possibly 5-bedroom homes. So in 2024 we've sold around 12 properties. We was expecting to sell around 30. In terms of the future, we've safeguarded the possibility of that recovery coming with the first-time market as my colleagues already explained, there's sort of around 77% of the development is already 2 and 3 bedroom properties. So we feel there's a more than adequate sales mix there for full availability of different products moving forward. So I think to answer your question, we're optimistic that there will be changes in the market in the coming years. What we're asking members to help us with at the moment is an acknowledgement that at the moment people are looking more at the 4 and 5 bedroom properties.
Thank you. Any more questions for the applicant? Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of, this is a price competitive market, and is it there the potential to look at that in terms of, do you think that's affecting demand in this market?
I think it's a fair and reasonable challenge. There's always a price point. Obviously, we're a housing development. We sell houses. It's what we do, and I think that's a fair comment. I think the reality is it's a difficult economic set of circumstances we find ourselves in, and a lot of the support mechanisms by government for those first-time buyers aren't in place. Taylor Wimpey is able to offer discounts and reductions in prices, which we've already undertaken at Brantham. That has resulted in some sales that we've been able to make, but it's still a challenging environment. As my colleague explained, there are benefits to the second-hand market, i.e. when you're upgrading in terms of your properties, because you're invariably already on the property ladder, and those people are a little bit more financially secure potentially and able to take some of the 5-year interest rates that are being offered at the moment. But I think it's fair to say it's challenging for people at the moment, but we have just seen a big drop-off in the number of people walking through the door wanting to buy properties.
Thank you. Follow-up, yes?
So if we accept that, in terms of the 4 to 5 bedroom market, those challenges aren't so much? Is it fair to say? I'm just trying to get at how the whole system's working.
I think it's fair to say the 4 and 5 bedroom market is a little bit more stable. That's what we find, there's a stability in that. We're getting the level of sales that we've had previously, and that's across the region, not specific to this site. It's the 2 and 3 beds, which on this particular development, we've already been able to see, just haven't been able to sell. As Alison explained a moment ago, we've only had 2 and 3 bedroom properties available in 2024. So we've been able to sell some, which has been great news, and there's a selection of different properties available to potential customers. But when people have come in asking for a larger property, we've been unable to offer them at the moment.
Thank you. Any more questions for the applicant? Councillor Holt.
If this was to be granted, would it prevent the site from being fully developed, as in the locations of these potential changes? Would you look to build them out first and leave the rest of the site stagnant?
No, we're ready to build these plots in the beginning of December, which is in terms of our production flow. We are ready to build those beginning of December to meet that need that's been experienced currently. But then we will carry on with our standard build programme following the construction of these replanned areas. So we won't just build these plots and then stop. We will carry on, but to deliver the housing mix that's proposed to the rest of the site.
Councillor Holt, a follow-up?
So am I correct in assuming then what you're saying is the phasing that you've got in place will deliver these houses, if they are agreed today, quicker, but some of the 2 to 3 bedrooms will still not be built out until these new phases are completed? But we've seen sites before where you sell what you can sell and then the rest of the site will just stand there until the demand increases, which obviously for you makes economic sense. But from the village point of view, from Brantham's point of view, just leave the site unfinished. And that, I would say, is a concern, that you're asking us to approve specific areas where you want to build out, where you will then get the money in. But if there obviously isn't the demand, you're not going to finish the site. Would you then come back to us again and say, can we change it again?
I think that's a fair and reasonable question, and I think from our perspective, the reason we'd like these sort of small pockets of replan is to try to give Taylor Wimpey as a business and our sales team more specifically the opportunity to have all suites of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties available as customers come in. So the reason the replan is sort of a little bit pepper potted, and as I believe the officer explained some of the geography around the development, it's And so on our existing build route, we can offer all of this different plethora of houses. So this is all about giving us the biggest opportunity to deliver the most amount of houses in the quickest timescale. So the reason we're asking for some flexibility and ultimately provision of some larger units is because at the moment all we've got is 2 and 3 bedrooms. So if members move today towards recommendation for approval, we would then be able to offer 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties immediately. And the reason these particular areas have been picked is because they are immediately available on our current build route. If you went on site and did a site walk over them, I'm minded that the parish has been out to site recently and had a look, that you will see that we are ready to build these properties now. So yeah, this is to maximise and indeed accelerate delivery.
Any more questions? Councillor Crunt.
Thank you, Chair. This might be an obvious question, I'm not sure, but on page 31, 13.3, it talks about there being a fallback position that could be exercised were this application to be refused. Can you explain what the fallback position is? Is it just as it was before the new application?
Yes, we currently obviously have the reserve matters consent, which is as approved. So if this amendment wasn't approved today, then we would just carry on building what we've already got approval for, which obviously would then mean that we weren't meeting people's needs.
Thank you. Was it Councillor Davis? You had your hand up. I'll come back to Councillor May.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just kind of double checking my understanding. So you're saying that the sales of the 2 and 3 bedroom houses slumped when the rules changed around Help to Buy, that left. How many houses had you, 2 and 3 bedroom, had you sold before that change? And how many 2 and 3 bedrooms have you sold since that change? Plus, have you changed the price point of the 2 and 3 bedroom houses as you've gone along? And if you have, did that coincide with a slump in the sales of those?
I think the slump in the sales has really come about because of sort of the wider market conditions. So you've had the increased mortgage rates, which we have really noticed a hit. And obviously there is a bit of a delayed response to that because we've already had the houses that were reserved previously. So that's delayed the impact, if you like. And I think it's taken slightly longer for the sort of economic situation to improve than we had sort of anticipated, and there's always going to be a lag in terms of housing demand once the economic situation improves. So we sort of experienced it last year, and that's when we start looking at what we're delivering and are we going to still be in a position to be delivering the right product for the right demand looking forwards. So there's always a reaction period, if you like. So we have noticed since January, as I was explaining, the figures have dropped right off. So normally, as a BU, we would expect, so a business unit, we would expect a 0.68 house per week sale rate. So we'd normally expect to sell 0.68 of a house every week on a site, which would have delivered that 31 number of houses to be sold on this development. What we've experienced on this development is a 0.27 a week house sale rate, if that makes sense. So that's reduced it down to 12, to the 12 that we've sold since January. So we have noticed a real slump in the number of properties that we can sell on here. And they have been all 2 and 3 bedroom houses. And our sales team have said that whilst we haven't been selling those, we have had sort of 2 or 3 families a month coming in and saying, can we buy a 4-bed house? So as I sort of tried to explain, the larger house market seems to be more resilient to the economic situation we've got at the moment.
Okay, you said that before, but has the price point of the 2 and 3 bed houses changed?
No, but we have offered sort of incentives and discounts and things to try and encourage people to make them more affordable for people. So we do have some sort of products that our sales team can sort of offer and discounts and things to make it more accessible for people.
Okay, so what about the 4 and 5 bed houses? Have you...
Councillor Davis, I think you've possibly beaten this up a little bit. Can you sort of conclude relatively quickly?
Okay. What's your most profitable house type? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bed.
I think that's a question that's really hard to answer depending on the scale of the unit of the house itself.
Have a go.
Well, it's an impossible question to answer because it really would depend. So typically, if you could have more is often better if you talk about profitability. However, on an individual basis, probably a larger house might make as a standalone more profit, but typically, 3 is better than 2 houses typically. It is so subjective to geography, price point, location, type of house. So there's so many variables in there. But to answer your question, which I'm sure is where you're heading with this, is this profit driven? It is not. This is about availability of stock. This is about availability to customers who come through the door. As I believe my colleague explained earlier, this development has flooded with lots of small product on, which is fantastic. However, we found ourselves in a position where we've got people coming in through the door wanting to buy larger houses, and we don't have any available. And that is why we're asking members today to hopefully see our line with our thinking, which is by having less 3 and 2 beds in this instance, having some 4 and 5s, a very small scale part of this development gives us that wider spectrum of house types available. So when we do get those customers wanting to buy properties, we can sell and we can continue to deliver at Brantham the houses for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, could you just clarify the size in total of this site? And then there's another question. The size in total of the site, as in acreage, rather than hectares, but carry on.
Might just have to check through. I don't know if the officer can advise on that whilst we check.
I just want 23 acres. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just on clarification. Thank you. Why I'm asking this is, so I understand from our officer, originally the site was put forward for 302 dwellings. You reduced it to 288 by application. Thank you. Now it's gone down to 281. Thank you for those figures. What concerns me is, if we had 288 houses still built on here, only 24% of those would be NDSS compliant. Now, I've always been against reducing the interior size of properties for the benefit of all residents. There is nothing worse than not finding enough room in a property. So I would like to ask you why originally your properties were not, only 24% were NDSS compliant, when now they're going to be 90% of them. Does that make sense? Yep.
Excuse me, Councillor, could you just ask that again so even I can understand it?
Thank you. It's absolutely fine. Originally, at the moment, you have 288 properties to be built. Only 24% of those are going to be NDSS compliant, according to our officer. If you change, if this was granted, this change of application was granted, you would have 90% compliant. My question, that's what we were told, 90% by the officer. My question is, why were you originally building houses that were not NDSS compliant?
Well, can I just clarify?
Chair, yeah, it's 90% of the units in question, not of all of the units.
Yeah, of the new units, the substituted units, 90% would be NDSS. So you're only talking about 9 dwellings, not the whole site.
Thank you, that wasn't clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
That answered your question?
Well, not really, Chairman, because my question still is, why are these houses being built when they're not NDSS compliant, any of them?
Okay.
Chair, I mean, I do respect Councillor Mabry's question, but we're talking there about a decision that has been made previously, and really we're here today to talk about the changes which are being sought now. And that's an old decision that was made 2-3 years ago.
Thank you, but I have made my point at planning committee.
Thank you.
Chair, I can't resist being a pedantic lawyer and saying if you say yes today, the applicant still has the choice to build 288, but I'm sure they wouldn't have gone to this trouble as a commercial organisation if they don't want to build 281 by way of preference.
Thank you, Ian. I think we'll get you to lead the debate a little bit later. Thank you. Any more questions for the applicants? No? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
I just want to go back to the question about the appeal that was asked. I've got the answer. So I know we talked about whether it was relevant, but I can give you the factual response to that.
The only reason I allowed it is because it put into context for Councillor Register, who's not had sight, was not involved with the previous ones, some idea of the timescale of things going on. Yes. So if you want to tell
just to give a factual response, so it related to another site, obviously, but obviously it was seen to be relevant to this site, Slough Road. And the decision was made, our reference, DC 19-01973. The planning inspector's decision was 25th January 2021, so approaching 4 years ago, if that helps.
Thank you. No more? Okay, in that case, thank you. If you stay there, we'll most probably come back to you over some point of clarification, if you don't mind. I now invite the ward member, Councillor McCraw, to speak. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I'm very glad to say Councillor Bridgman has made many of my points, which should shorten my short interlude. This is now my 12th year of dealing with the Brantham regeneration area. I think that's a long sentence. Now, the history has been covered. I think it's important to see this from the village point of view in what this was all about. It was about producing industrial regeneration for which the housing was a necessary component to cross-subsidise that. Because of that cross-subsidy and because of viability concerns, 0% affordable housing. Now, on a project of this size, you'd normally expect 100 properties of affordable housing. I think we've all had developments in our own patches and areas, and we have accepted that some mitigation is provided by the provision of affordable housing. So this has not just been unwelcome, it's been unwelcome without any necessary reward. We haven't achieved the industrial regeneration, incidentally, for a variety of reasons, many of which were pointed out at the original time. Now the question here is the changes. I'm not entirely happy with the strategic housing assessment and the use of statistics to make a match for a sort of mythical perfect district. I'm not really particularly thinking of the district here, I'm thinking of Brantham. And we all as members know that it is the 2 and 3 bedroom properties that we want as a housing mix and fewer of the 4 and 5 bedroom houses. That's what our residents tell us, that's what our experience tells us, and by the way, that's what both the core strategy and the JLP have told us. That's what we've done in developing those plans. I hold to that to this day. Now, it's been suggested that there's been a slowdown in the market for 2 and 3 bedroom houses. Well, there's also been a slowdown in building on this site for the last 2 years. It's been quite noticeable that bricklayers have been conspicuous by their absence. I don't know if that has any input into what you can sell. I'm also concerned about the setting of a precedent here. Now, the developer made its application under the reserve matters some 3-4 years ago, and we're happy with the mix at that point. And we set those mixes for a good reason. It's not just made up. We know what we need, and if we're going to allow developers to shift the housing mix at every available opportunity, where will we stop? Now, I'm sure that the other developers would look at this and say, oh, Babergh are okay with that. Well, let's have a look and see what we can do as well. I think that could be a dangerous precedent to set. I've already mentioned the failure of the industrial regeneration. I am pleased about one aspect of this because it's brought to light the 1 million of affordable housing in a commuted sum. I understand that that in policy terms cannot be automatically granted to a particular community, but I would suggest that given what Brantham has taken in terms of this housing, in terms of non-regeneration, a failed policy, if one must be honest about it, it's been complete failure. No new tenants, and we have some infrastructure that nobody seems to want to use. I would make the suggestion to strategic housing that opportunities for spending that £1 million be looked for in Brantham specifically as the least part, only a just reward, if you like, for having taken this load in the first place. I think Councillor Bridgman's made all the other points I would want to, and I would ask you not to pass this alteration in the housing mix. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGraw. I'm just going to call a break there. A personal requirement for myself. 5 minutes, if anybody else. Thank you, everyone. We will resume by asking the ward member, are you willing to answer questions? And are there any for him before he can change his mind? Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McCraw. I agreed with everything that you said, and we all fight for what we think is right for our ward. And I do definitely agree with you, but you say the need is for two-bedroomed houses, but the sales figures don't seem to dispute that. So I'm wondering how you can reconcile that, how, you know, that there doesn't seem to be any proof, any evidence of it. So I'd really, you know, I want to support you, but at the moment I'm finding, can I, because the evidence doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah, I don't have the evidence for those sales figures. In fact, I don't think we've actually seen any evidence. We have an anecdotal version of it. It may be true. All I'm saying is I have noticed that there's been very little activity on the site in the course of the last 2 years, and it seems to me it's difficult to sell properties if you stop building them. Now, that's just an observation, no more than that, and I have no proof of that beyond my assertion that it is so. But we've known for all our years on the council of the sort of properties that we need in our housing mix, and we've set our planning policies to which the applicant agreed and put into a housing mix for the original, well, not the original, the reserved matters application. That was an accepted part of their, the basis of their application, and I don't believe making changes all over the place. And it might seem small, but from the point of view of Brantham, we believe that we want people, if they can't have affordable housing, which seems to be the case here, at least they can have less expensive housing. And we think that opportunity should exist, and that's what was included in the original plan. And we believe that actually that should be held to.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor McCraw? No. Thank you. Okay. I'll just check with the officers that there's nothing you want to...
I just wondered if it would help members just to have that table back up again to show you exactly how the mix is changing, the exact numbers. It is in the agenda as well, but if it would help just to have it on the screen, that's up to you.
Yes, please. That one?
Yeah, so that table shows that there would be a loss of two-bedroomed houses, 13 three-bed houses, and an increase of 7 four-bedroom and 1 five-bedroomed.
Thank you.
Sorry, is this the site?
This
figures,
is the table
or the district figures, please.
for this planning application.
This, yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
This is the breakdown as it is now compared to what it was for the last application, the approved application. Thank you. Okay. If there's no other comments, I will open the debate. Is there anyone who'd like to kick off? Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, Chairman. I propose that we go to a vote. Thank you.
Is that you proposing?
I am proposing, thank you.
The officer's recommendation.
I am proposing the officer's recommendation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Holt, second.
I'll second that, if that's all right, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. we will go to the vote if there's nobody else with anything they wish to say.
I think there's a discussion about possible condition on NDSS. I'm not sure what members wanted to do with that. It came up early on. Sam, at M42.
Yeah, I think Councillor Davies was maybe seeking a condition to secure the M42 condition, that 50% of the substituted houses would be compliant with that building regulation.
So what exactly are we calling in this condition? No, what exactly are we putting in this condition?
Put your microphone
It
on.
says at least 50% of the dwellings meet the standards set out in Part M4. It's not clear if this has been adhered to. So my question was, firstly, had it been adhered to? And then, if not, could we put a condition in that it be so?
I think the element you're citing there are the comments from strategic housing, and I think the issue is covered later in the report, isn't it, Samantha? For NDSS and enforcement.
Yes, so even though we've had a kind of a verbal suggestion from the developer that the M42 would apply to 50% of the houses, of the substituted housing, I should say, not the 281, just the substituted ones. I understand from building regulations that would need to be secured by condition. I'm not sure about the NDSS because the houses have already been designed, so I don't think we can control that side of things, but certainly the building regulations where we're talking about width of doorways, bathrooms, etc., we can secure that by condition. So it would only be the M42 that we would be able to secure.
Put a condition in that says they should be consistent with the NDSS. That's 5.3.
I think my recommendation accepts that one house that is not compliant is acceptable on the basis that the other houses are not NDSS compliant. So I can't control that. The NDSS, I can't control that because the houses have already been designed. However, the internal alterations that would be required for older people living, etc., we can control that by condition. So only the M42.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay,
So, yeah.
One moment. I have a proposer and seconder. Are you willing to accept an additional condition to your proposal?
I am happy to accept that. The one point I would like to make, please, is that it's not always the older generation that needs these. It's the things that happen in life that you never expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybe. Councillor Holt, are you happy to accept the condition? You are. So the condition has been put on to the proposal.
Thank you.
If there's no more discussion, I'll just clarify with the area planning manager exactly what you're voting on.
It's as per the submitted papers, with the addition of a condition asking that a minimum of 50% of the new dwellings, we should call them that, shall be M42 compliant.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask the government officer to begin the vote?
Thank you, Chair. That vote has now been updated and is in progress. Thank you. Thank you, Members. Chair, that's 10 votes for and 1 against. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, could I just say a big thank you to Samantha?
Yes.
She's shielding at the moment. She's about to undergo some pretty major surgery, and she's going to be off for a few months. So, Samantha, thank you very much for coming in and doing that.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, we'll get ready to move on to the next item. Thank you very much, everyone. If we may, get ready for the next.
Just need to check that Councillor Dowling, whether he wants to stay on the committee as a ward member.
Who?
Councillor Dowling.
Oh, okay.
Well, as you know, Corks Lane is one of my favourite hobby horses, but I don't have anything to say about this particular matter. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pity, because you would have been the first person I'd have gone to. But, never mind. Okay, moving on to DC 2403530, the former District Council offices, Corks Lane. I'll invite the case officer, Alex Redman, to introduce the application today.
Right-hand side.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. Sorry if there's any hiccups. I haven't been to a committee for a couple of years, but I'll make it as smooth as I can. I am presenting application reference DC 2403530 this morning. This is an application at the former Babergh District Council offices, which seeks advertisement consent for the erection of a non-illuminated mounted sign at the junction between Corks Lane and Bridge Street. For some context, here's obviously an aerial map of the site. So we have the former District Council office here. The sign is proposed at roughly here, but I'll show you in a little more detail in a second. As you can see there, the green dot just pointing to the exact location of the sign in between the junction. In terms of site constraints, the actual location of the site is outside of a settlement boundary, but given that it's for an advertisement consent, the principle is essentially established. But we do obviously have to note the conservation area which surrounds, as you can see, oh, sorry, I've gone a little too far, which surrounds in the purple line, as you can see down along here, and obviously a couple of listed buildings directly adjacent to the site as well. Heritage officers' comments are obviously in the report. So this plan again shows a little bit more detail as to where the sign would actually be located. You can see setback from the junction just underneath the trees, and perhaps importantly as well, you can see from this purple line across here indicates visibility and just shows that essentially the sign is not going to be impeding any road users as they're exiting the junction onto Bridge Street. I'll just leave this one up for a moment for yourselves to look at. Obviously, it just shows the exact details of what the sign will look like, measurements. The only details that aren't on there are that in terms of material, it would be timber and obviously painted.
And then for a little bit more context of the site, this is looking north down Bridge Street. We can see the listed building on the side here, and some more on this side of the road too. The actual location of the sign again would be set on this corner roughly here. And this again in the opposite direction. Again, signage placed approximately here. And this is sort of an indicative image provided by the applicants. One thing probably just to note on this is that, again, it's indicative, and I think realistically the sign would be set back further here, again, just to ensure that there is visibility for road users as they're using the junction. And that is the presentation. The officer's recommendation, again, as per the report, is to grant the advertisement consent, but on the basis of the sign being temporary until September 2025. Thank you very much.
Do you want to ask a question?
No, it's a comment. Having been part of Babergh previously, I was previously given dispensation to speak. Am I still allowed?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holt, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose and recommend the officer's recommendation. I just hope the applicant can afford the sign.
Wait. Thank you. Well, is anybody wishing to second that? Council Register. Right? Okay, second. Any more comments from anyone? We'll have Councillor Grandin first.
Thank you. So it seems that the facing side of the sign will be for those coming into Hadleigh from the Bilderston side. It seems to me that if there's nothing on the back of the sign, it's going to be a distraction for people coming out of Hadleigh. So has that been thought of? And it's just going to look like a weird back of...
No, I appreciate that. If maybe if this helps, if we go back to the sort of access overview. Oh, sorry, I'll do this one. I'll skim through really quickly. Again, I think although this image is helpful in that it kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to look like, it's not helpful in that this isn't, I think, a true reflection of where it will be located. I think it will be shifted back, and what we'll see on this one. So I think the rear of it is more so going to be pushed back behind, sort of facing these trees. And I think as you're coming down the road on this side, I think we're going to be so far back from it. I don't think it would be a distraction, if I'm honest. But we could, if you wanted to include a kind of a condition or something for us so we know what's going to be on the back of that sign.
Yeah,
quite happy to include something like that, yeah.
Yeah, or have it a reverse, sign on both sides, or because then if you know what it is, then it's not so distracting.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just think from a design point of view and from a driver's point of view, it attracts your eye, and then you think, what is it? Whereas if you can see right away it's a sign for those buildings, then you kind of understand what it is, and you keep driving.
Of course, yeah. I think we can include a condition sort of.
It probably disappears amongst the trees, to be honest, Councillor.
Well, then, is there any point in it?
Oh, no, come from the other direction, so
Oh,
the front.
see.
I think from that way you've got the trees, then, yeah, wood against wood, if you like. I don't know if you want to start asking them to put something on the back. I just
no,
think
if it's not necessary, but maybe if that can be looked at as a potential issue. And
We'll talk to the that part of the council and see whether they think it's visible. If it is, we can ask them to put it on the back as well. But I suspect nobody can see anything.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the angle.
Okay,
and
I think we've dealt.
Everything.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing. This is facing, when it's in place, it's on the verge and it's facing the traffic. Is that right? Okay. And it's only one-sided. Are we absolutely sure of that?
The drawing shows one side, doesn't it, Alex? one site, and it shows where it would be as well. The mock-up is a suggestion, but as Alex says, it's inaccurate. But the plan, the approved plan, shows where it would be.
Fine. Is everybody happy with that? Well, can we have Councillor Davis? Do you want to comment? A question to ask?
Yes, please. This might sound slightly dumb, but when they're installing the sign, assuming it's granted, could somebody please check that you can actually see to get out of the turning? I'm kind of assuming people do that, but sometimes I've seen signs that aren't.
We consulted the Highway Authority and they're happy with it.
Okay. And the second thing is, I note the heritage comment about the sign should be removed following the final sale. Could we possibly include that as a condition as well, just to make certain it does go at the end?
We've got a time-sensitive condition on it. If you like, we can have a whichever is the soonest element.
That sounds good.
Okay.
At the minute, the condition is just until September of next year, but like I said, we can adjust the wording of that and tweak it. That's fine.
I'm guessing they won't all be sold by then, to be honest, but we can have whichever's the soonest.
So you're changing the condition. So the proposer, are you happy with that change?
Not really, but if that's what the majority want, so be it. This is more of a marketing exercise we're conducting at the moment rather than planning applications.
Yeah. How's that, yeah? You seconder? You're happy with that?
I actually remember what Councillor Holt just said.
Okay, so I think we'll leave that as it is as the proposal is at the moment. Councillor Grant, you've got one quick comment?
Yes, I notice the sign itself is not lit. Can you confirm that it won't be illuminated by a light, please?
Yeah, I mean the description in itself is clear that it's non-illuminated.
Yeah.
There are no details of lighting, and so
there won't be a separate light
No,
put up
there
around
shouldn't be,
there? Thank you.
Okay. We have a proposer and a seconder. Are you happy with?
Yeah, it's
as it is from the officer. Can I ask the governance officer to arrange the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Osborne, your vote hasn't come through, have you? Thank you, members. Chair, that's 11 votes for. That's carried.
Carried
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you. I now formally... Oh, sorry, go on.
Just raised an issue, Chair. Councillor Wyman mentioned he went on a site visit earlier. I just wonder, when you look at 10.5 of the planning charter, it doesn't actually comply. I'd just like to make sure that members are aware when conducting their own personal site visits to refer to the planning charter to ensure that they are carried out correctly.
I think Councillor Wybrow is most probably more au fait with that than anyone else at the moment because he's involved on the committee reviewing it.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just...
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just check what 10.5 refers to?
Site
Just the general site visit conduct, is it? Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Are these
comments that we can do after?
comments we do, or do we have to do them in the meeting, or?
It's a question that's relevant to everybody. On my teams, I've got a planning committee meeting scheduled for the 27th of November. Is that going ahead or not?
We don't know yet.
I need to know because I have to make a decision.
At this moment in time,
We have nothing tabled, so if I was a betting
It's
man,
not in the workload.
I'd say no if I was a betting man, but you have to
Well,
wait confirmation.
You beat me to it because I was going to discuss this with Mark and Claire after this meeting.
Okay.
And we'll give you notice in due. So, I'm going to close the meeting, right? Unless Simon's got something desperately to do with the meeting.
Well, it is really, it's about traffic and starting at 9:30, and the two don't match up. Can I suggest we start our meetings at 10 o'clock in future in order to avoid rush hour?
I'm going to suggest that we close the public part of the meeting and we have those discussions in a session afterwards, because it's not part of, just so that we can then close the stream. So, thank you.
Okay. I declare the meeting closed.